Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world today. This is David Robert for the Marketplace of Ideas podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful start to your December. It is December 2nd, 2023. We are barreling into the last month of this year. So hopefully we're going to end it with a lot of good stuff. We got a lot of great content, a lot of great stories coming your way, so stay tuned. You can find the Marketplace of Ideas podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just want to let that out before we get started. So wherever you get them, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, you name it, we are there, rocking, rolling, loving life. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be chatting about something very interesting and very, I don't want to call it risque, but it's a little bit saucy, as it were. We're going to be chatting about the history and the relevancy of the sexy Santa trope, or the naughty Santa that we've seen in pop culture over the last couple of years. I was looking for some topics for this podcast a few nights ago, and I came across an article that talked about how Santa got sexy, and that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, so I checked it out, and I thought, yeah, you know what, let's dive into this a little bit. So it's kind of funny. A little bit of background. I remember years ago, I was watching the movie with, oh my gosh, the actor who played, he was married to, oh goodness, who is it? Let me just look it up here. Check my notes here. Yes, Billy Bob Thornton plays in the title role of Bad Santa. It was in 2003. It was an American Christmas black comedy crime film, and it was directed by Terry Zwigoff and written by Glenn Faccaria. I hope I'm saying that right. And John Requa. And starring Billy Bob Thornton, Lauren Graham, Burt Kelly, Lauren Tom, John Ritter, and Bernie Mac. So John Ritter and Bernie Mac have since passed since the filming of this role. But it was an interesting film, and Lauren Graham played Sue, who was, kind of like in love with, or had a kind of an interesting scene with Bad Santa. So the idea of authority figure, a matriarchal kind of icon within the holiday season being turned on its head and being made into something that's a little bit risque is nothing new. Obviously, we've seen, if you are of a certain vintage, a certain age, you would remember the Mean Girls movie back in 2004 with Lindsay Lohan and the Plastics, where they performed the Jingle All the Way song in bright leather Santa outfits, tight crop tops, and Santa hats, and thigh-high black boots. So the idea of turning this jolly, jovial character into something that is very naughty and very saucy is something that's a time-honored tradition. So it was interesting to watch the movie Bad Santa, because in it there was a lot of foul language, there was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of very, how can I put this delicately? A lot of stuff in there that you wouldn't want a child listening to. You wouldn't want a child saying. Yet for all, there were children in the movie, and it was rated R. It was rated R, and it ran at 1 hour and 33 minutes, and it was pretty funny. The premise behind it, if I could, let's see, discuss that. So in this dark comedy, the crotchety Willie T. Stokes, Billy Bob Thornton, and his partner Tony Cox reunite once a year for a holiday con. Posing as a mall Santa and his elf, they rip off shopping outlets on Christmas Eve. This year, however, Willie is falling apart. He's depressed and alcoholic, and his erratic behavior draws the suspicion of mall security Bernie Mac. But when befriending a small boy brings out his kinder side, Willie begins to wonder if there is still hope for him. So it definitely takes the idea of Santa and makes it into something that's a little bit non-traditional, if I could say that. It was funny. It released on November 26, 2003, and it grossed over $76.5 million at the box office. And it was funny. It kind of, if I could be honest, was funny because he was Santa. Now, if this was just a clown or an Easter bunny or a leprechaun or some other individual dressed up as another character from a holiday that we celebrate, it probably wouldn't be as funny. But the idea that Santa Claus is this figure that, when we're younger, in particular in various cultures, the idea of Saint Nick, Santa Claus, Father Christmas is seen as a counterbalance to a lot of the commerce, capitalism, rampant spending that goes on during the holiday season. It's no secret that many businesses and companies and corporations wait for the day right after Halloween until the middle of January to literally get their books right for the remainder of the year. They might have crappy sales, they might have low customer turnout, but when Christmas hits, people are spending like drunken sailors on leave, right? That's when it gets a little bit, people start to, feel some kind of way about spending. They want to get out there. They want to enjoy the holiday season. And in doing so, they're spending a lot of their hard-earned bucks. And so you have the opposite side of that with Santa, where here's somebody who's talking about peace and love and, sharing time with little kids and talking about giving gifts. The kids don't have to pay anything, right? I mean, in some malls, you might have a little bit of a cost you got to pay to have your kids see Santa. But other than that, most places it's free. And then kids can have this really great experience. And so it's this positive thing versus spend, buy, and everything else. So there's a few things that, before I get to some of the articles I was checking out for this episode, I want to talk about. And in particular, when we're looking at Santa, I think it's really important to note that so much of the iconography for Christmas has been made up. If you are somebody who is a believer of Christ, you follow the practices of that Palestinian Jew that came to save the world more than 2,000 years ago, son of a carpenter, also son of a virgin mother, then the holiday season holds a different, importance for you. The birth of the Savior who came to save the world from sin. For the Jewish folks out there, it's a whole different holiday. I believe Hanukkah is the focal point. I'm not too well versed on that holiday, so I'd have to look that up. Then we got different offshots of Kwanzaa and everything else. But most of the stuff we see for the advertising for the holiday season, we have the trees, we got the presents, we have the wreaths, we have the cranberry sauce, all the eating, the celebrations, hopefully the receiving of the of the year-end bonus for your company that you work with, the three wise men, the thought of Jesus being born in a manger. All of these things tend to take, how could I say this? They tend to take a bit of a liberal license with the truth. As we realize when we do some research for Christian literature, Christ probably wasn't born anywhere in December. It was probably closer to the summer. He probably would have been a lot older, wouldn't have been a swaddling babe in a manger, probably would have been a toddler, or maybe even closer to, 3 or 4 years of age. And the wise men that went to see him, even though there were 3 gifts that were presented, there probably would have been a lot more than just 3 of them. In that time period, the Magi would have traveled to see the King of the Jews. Probably would have taken them months if, the fact that they were traveling with a caravan and camels and everything else would have just been a real trek for them to get there. And so a lot of the stuff that we view when it comes to Christmas, from the snowmen to, Frosty the Snowman, to trains, to all of the hoopla that pertains to the Christmas holiday. A lot of it's marketing. And so it would not take me by surprise, and it would not be in the slightest out of context to add another layer to the mythos of Christmas with a sexy Santa or a bad Santa type of imagery when people are out there, celebrating the season. One of the things to note when I was doing research for this was also the rise of sexy attire, sexy Santa themed lingerie when it comes to the holiday season. The type of stuff that's put out there when we're talking about bedroom fun and activities that has a Christmas theme to it can turn people a little bit off to the whole thing, as well as turn some people onto it. Some of the people that I was reading about were saying things like, it's wrong and disturbing to have people take something that's supposed to be wholesome and childlike and sort of turn it into something salacious and, dare I say, pornographic. So the first thing I wanted to touch on with the whole Santa thing before I dive into some of these articles here was that I've had an interesting relationship with the whole Santa myth from a kid. And I remember when I was working at Lingerie Mall, this was at Edmonton at the time, this was, so many years ago. And I was working there at Payless Shoes, which I don't know if they're still around. I know in Canada they're not around. I don't know if they're still around in the States. But I was working at their Payless, and I was vamping the shoes. And, for those who've worked at a Payless, if you know, right? Vamping the shoes, you're making sure everything's nice and neat. And to be totally honest, for somebody with mild OCD, it was a dream because everything has to be neat and orderly. And so I'm getting everything together, and I'm on my break. I'm just having a sandwich or something, sitting in the food court, just downstairs there. And this Santa, this guy was on his break, he's sitting there next to me. And I remember because I'm just sitting right by the door or the entrance to head outside kind of thing, get some fresh air. And so, I'm eating, I go to throw out my sandwich, throw out my wrapper, sorry. And I see him, he goes out to have a smoke. And so I'm just, chatting with him. Hey, how's it going, man? How's Christmas treating you? And he's sitting there, and he's got the beard half off. He's got the smoke, and he's got stains on his red Santa jacket. And he's telling me about, the kids that were throwing up on him, and one kid peed on him, and screaming kids, but he's making money for the holidays. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever, because you grow up thinking that Santa is one way. He's this jolly elf, former elf. I don't know what theory you follow, but he's a former elf that made good. He's in charge of the North Pole. He's got his wife with him. She's holding him down when he's away on the 24th. He's got a sleigh. He's got his reindeer. He's got a toy factory. And I always wondered, my brother and I would joke about the fact that, do these elves have any health insurance? Is it unionized, the toy factory? But whatever. And there's this feeling, this warm, fuzzy glow about the whole thing, which can make the holiday season when it's over even more dramatic, because for the last 2 months, you've been cocooned in this sort of warm, fuzzy, happy-go-lucky, everybody's jolly type of thing. We got gifts coming. Oh, it's New Year's Eve. Everyone's drinking and partying. Oh, whatever. And then the end of it, like probably like the first weekend of January, you've got this feeling of just dread, because middle of January until literally the end of March, you've got this 8 to 10 week slog of just cold weather, slushy streets. It's dark when you go to work. It's dark when you come home. And you're like, gosh dang, and January the 21st is actually the most depressing day of the year, statistically speaking, because it's 3 weeks after everything has gone down. The bills have shown up for all the stuff that you purchased. By that time period, you haven't kept up with your New Year's resolutions. You've totally given up on the gym, of not drinking, of, being more motivated. And it starts the cycle over again, and people just get really lambasted. So my thing is to not just celebrate throughout the Christmas season, but not blow your whole load, like throughout the 2 months, but spread it out. So you have, some get-togethers in January. You got some stuff going on in February and March, and and by the time spring hits, then we're, okay, now we're rolling again, So, but the idea of the sexy Santa shouldn't be any type of surprise to anybody. And this article I was checking out here, which I wanted to read. Let me just see here. Let me just bring that up. Okay. Sorry, my internet's a bit slow here. So this was a Vice article that was written on December 13th, 2021, so a few years ago, by Vice.com, and it was written by Romano Santos at 11:39 p.m. on that day, and it basically said, "We asked people who wear sexy Santa costumes why. The holidays, a time to eat, drink, and get kinky. The holidays are usually a time for family, and Santa is a normal character for children. Kinky costumes, on the other hand, are things adults normally enjoy in private. So it might seem strange to combine the two and turn what's typically a wholesome affair into a sexy one. The Father Christmas, who keeps a list of the naughty and nice prances... that Father Christmas, who keeps a list of the naughty and nice, prances around the world screaming, ho, 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 and sneaks into houses late at night, bearing gifts from his sack, has become a sex symbol. However, this is nothing new. Millennials will remember the iconic talent show from Mean Girls, where Regina George and company Jingle Bell rocked the crowd in tight red tank tops, short skirts, and Santa hats. If you know, let me tell you, it was a beautiful movie. But in 2016, Pornhub reported that searches for Santa on the platform increased by 447% around the holidays, as related terms like bad Santa, sexy Santa, and naughty Santa also saw significant spikes. This naughty fixation of Santa also seems to have found its way from big and small screens into people's homes, as a search for sexy Santa on Amazon, for example, brings up 1,000 costumes and accessories. In another Vice article, social psychologist Justin Lee Miller suggested a few explanations behind Santa's sex appeal. One is that it's a seasonal flavor of a more popular fetish, uniforms like that of cops and firefighters. Another is the way that Santa can be seen as a daddy figure, an older man with a bit of a dominant streak that appeals to all kinds of people. Finally, Lee Miller suggested that part of Santa's sex appeal may stem from people's subversion to what many consider to be a wholesome and religious holiday. Apart from the religious and traditional backgrounds, the stories around the holiday season, I think the holidays are a time for everyone to just enjoy and appreciate the people they love in their lives, and it's time to let loose, show each other we love each other, give presents to each other, but most of all, to give yourself the present of self-love and self-acceptance. Danielle Paraciello said, a 33-year-old nutritionist and fitness coach from Atlanta told Vice. Passarello who has worn sexy Santa costumes to Christmas parties and traditions like tree lighting ceremonies, said that he was drawn to the joy and magic Santa presents and represents, and the way it can be combined with more adult pleasure. He even dressed up with his boyfriend and his dog, who wore elf costumes. Everyone was a kid and everyone believed in magic, so Santa was always near and dear to a lot of our hearts. As adults, sexuality, lust, and pleasure take dominance over how we interact in the world and with other people, particularly in our intimate relationships. Bringing those who want to engage in this sort of activity together, it can be such a treat to bring back those magical, joyful, fun memories and couple them with adulthood, Danielle said. It's this sense of naughty nostalgia and subversion to the holiday spirit that Israel Dimri, a 34-year-old entrepreneur based in Los Angeles, who dresses up as a sexy Santa at holiday costume parties, likes about wearing the costume too. The combination of Santa as a character from childhood and, on the other hand, an adult sex symbol is perfect for me, a person that always wants to stay forever young and someone who loves being naughty, Dimri said, adding that sexy Santa costumes give him a fun and youthful feeling with a kinky twist. For Dimri, regular Santa is good, but sexy Santa is way better. Everyone loves Santa because he is pure good, and if he can be sexy too, then it's a plus. Former bikini model, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name, we'll call her Crystal, a 42-year-old from Hungary, said Santa lingerie costumes she wore for a photo shoot made her feel super sexy. We all like to play. We all like to be childish every now and again. And if it can be combined with a bit of spice, I think it's good for a change, she said Crystal. For her, the holidays are about love, slowing down, spending time with family and friends, and sometimes doing something different. For example, wearing a sexy Santa dress. In keeping with the spirit of the season, others choose to share the joy. We had a Christmas swingers party to bring in the Christmas season, said Rob Bampton, a 37-year-old sex coach based in Gold Coast, Australia, adding that the sexy Santa costumes he and his partner, Katie Jones, a 29-year-old triathlete, put on at the party fit well with the backdrop of Christmas songs. For Bampton and Jones, putting on a sexy Santa costume is a good way for people to embrace and express their inner confidence and desires. The holidays are a beautiful time to share with friends and family, make new friends full of enjoyment and happiness, and being merry. Wearing a sexy Santa outfit to special parties adds extra spice and a sense of naughty or nice to the event, said Bampton, adding that he and Jones have a few other matching costumes lined up for the season. To get her sexy Santa look, Skeets Jones puts together some lingerie and a tutu, while Bampton uses satin pants and suspenders. He said that the pants come off later in the night to reveal a reindeer G-string. There you go. Let's see. Passarello, whose costume consisted of a drugstore-bought Santa hat, red pants he already owned, and some suspenders from another costume, said there are no rules to wearing a sexy Santa costume. Whatever makes the person wearing it feel sexy and festive is right. Put on a Santa hat and then go from there. If you put on a beard because anonymity makes you feel sexier, do it. Feeling and being sexy is something personal, and when you share it with the world, that's a beautiful thing. And so, that was the end of the article there. So it's interesting. One of the things that article kind of showcased was the fact that people were, these are grown adults, first of all, that are consenting to partake in activities with their partners or other groups of people and to kind of enjoy the holiday season in a way. And so it's kind of funny because growing up, you never think of the holiday seasons as a child as something that's romantic or something that is salacious or in the least bit kind of naughty in that way because you're a child. And as you get a little bit older and you go through puberty and have your own kind of sexual awakening, then certain iconic tropes of the various holiday seasons can turn into that. I remember working at the Laugh Shop as a doorman there, and every Halloween, I was there for about 2 years, and for the 2 years I was there, the holiday seasons, we would get people who would take traditional themes of like, say, Easter or Christmas or Halloween in particular was particularly interesting. And they would be, a sexy firefighter, a sexy nurse, or some sort of, dirty superhero type costume. And it was interesting. It was funny. It was to the point where people would dress up that way and they would want you to play along. So they would, there's liquor flowing and people are drinking, pre-drinking before they come to the show. And then people would kind of expect you to want to play along. And so it was a playful environment. So I could definitely see how the stress of the holiday season could lead people to want to have a little bit of a relief, a little bit of a release, and kind of have a way to enjoy the season outside of the hustle and the bustle, the purchasing of gifts, the getting together with family and friends, the having to go to work parties, which are all first world problems because it's fun to have that. But if it's getting to be a little bit too much, sorry about that, had to take a quick bathroom break, but we're back. But yeah, so the holiday season can be pretty stressful. I think that's where we left off. And if people are willing to blow off some steam, dressing up as their favorite character to get a little bit racy, nothing wrong with that. Now, as much fun as this topic is, and as much enjoyment as people get dressing up in Santa-themed outfits for bedroom fun, or, backseat fun, or, kitchen fun, wherever you're getting it on, there are some detractors, right? There are some people, the perpetual wet blankets, who feel that when you take childlike innocence, the sanctity of the holy holiday, turn it on its head, and give it a almost sensual nature in theme and in practice, you're ruining the holidays. Many people in the research for this article talked about how disturbing it is to take, the innocence of a child writing a letter to Santa, trying to be on the nice list, not on the naughty list, and the phallic representations of candy canes, and Santa utilizing thigh-high boots and shortening the skirts and using all manners of sex toys with Christmas themes like a mistletoe belt buckle or a candy cane vibrator, things of that nature, just takes away from the holiday season. It drags it through the mud and the smut and makes it gross. Save that for your other perverted holidays, but leave Christmas alone. And we've seen the whining and complaining of the conservative Christian right, talking about how there's an attack on Christmas. A few years ago, Starbucks had an all-red cup that people thought was an attack of trying to remove Christ from the holiday season. We've seen people rally against companies who don't play Christmas music, that don't dress any type of decorations within their storefronts, and don't require their staff to say Merry Christmas, but more Happy Holidays and that kind of thing. So the holiday season can feel like it's being under attack, and it can feel like there are people that want to turn it into something that it isn't. And I would say we've kind of lost the boat on that, if we can be honest. I think we can say that Christmas as a religious holiday, people still hold true to that. But outside of that, there's a lot of people that don't view it as that at all. They see it as a celebration for the winter solstice. They see it as a way to get together with family and friends and to have fun and let loose and just relax and kind of reminisce on the year that was past. I remember when 2020 was drawing to an end, with the election in the United States, with the requiem of racism, with the awakening of the fact that we as a global community are not that separate, but that we had a global pandemic that affected and killed millions of people. It was a rough year. And I remember all of the top 10 lists deemed it as a dumpster fire. Ryan Reynolds, Maximum Effort, Content, and Marketing Company had a beautiful analogy of the year 2020 in which he had a caricature of Satan walking around having a date with a young woman who was named 2020. And it was just the icing on a crap Sunday of a year where people just wanted to shake it off like Taylor Swift, word to Tay-Tay, right? Just to shake it off and look to something new. Now, granted, in the United States on January the 6th, just 6 days after the new year in 2021, you would have people try to delegitimize the U.S. election for now President Joe Biden and, the former President 45, Trump, went in there and, tried to stir up all this crap. So it was a short-lived peace and respite from the crap year prior. But that's what December is for a lot of people. It's a month where a lot of people are just coasting. That last 2 weeks of the year from, the 24th until the 1st or the 2nd of January, not a lot going on for a lot of businesses and a lot of companies. When I worked as a dental technician, I've had a lot of jobs. And when I worked as a technician, that was a time where people were like, yo, we need to get the last of our benefits in for teeth and dental wear and metal stuff so people could actually use up their benefits, because a lot of companies don't roll over their stuff. So we would get a rush from about November to December was just balls to the walls. You're just going. And then it would slow down to a crawl in January. January was just dead. And you'd get a few cases a little bit, but for the most part, it was just like recovery. And then things would start picking up again, February, March, and April, and you'd be off to the races. But it was just kind of slow. And so the fact that Christmas is a time period where people can kind of, let loose a little bit and let go of some of the inhibitions is a good thing. For a lot of people who've lost relatives or loved ones, or who've lost jobs, or who've gone through a really rough time of it, the idea of playing around with the holiday in that way could be such a stress release. It can be such a cathartic feeling to, hey, be a little bit playful in the bedroom and be somewhat risque about it. To look at this figure and look at it a little bit differently. And so before I end here, there's another article that I saw. I just wanted to read out here. Hold on a second. And this was by the Huffington Post. This was written by Maja Kapler on December 19th, 2018, 2:06 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is, again, by the Huffington Post, and it's called The Cultural History of Sexy Santa Lingerie, looking at one of the holiday season's most baffling trends. And so, how and why is sexy Santa lingerie so popular? Christmas is not sexy, not at all, sex advice columnist Dan Savage said in a holiday episode of his podcast, Savage Love, from several years ago. For years, Savage has been waging a war on the eroticism of Christmas. In his view, a holiday celebrating the birth of a baby, and a virgin birth at that, is hardly an occasion for lust. But as any woman who has ever, been at a mall knows, there are a lot of people who have put a lot of money into convincing us otherwise. And one of the most pervasive and puzzling examples of the quest to make Christmas sexy is the ubiquity of Santa-themed lingerie. Santa lingerie has so permeated our culture that anyone reading this can probably picture the garments in question. Cherry red bras with a white fur trim lining the cuff, paired with matching panties or maybe a red satin and white fur teddy. And that's not just the most And that's just the most basic, least creation iteration of the trend. Chain retailer La Senza offers options including push-up Santa, Merry Widow Santa Uniline bra, which they suggest pairing with a Santa G-string panty and Santa Barely There bodysuits. So some of these are, let me see, are quite, I wouldn't say scandalous, but very much part of the theme of what they're trying to get across. These options are fairly affordable. The most expensive of them, the bodysuit, is $39.99, but this is by no means a low-end trend. Under the Christmas section of the website, Luxury Lingerie Agent Provocateur offers a bright red mulberry silk slip with white polka dots and a lace trim for $680. The matching dress gown is $815. When and how did lingerie evoking Santa, a wholesome and kindly childhood figure whose presence signals a religious virgin birth, get so popular? Undergarments for women have long been costume-like and were often meant to dramatically alter female silhouettes. Think restrictive whalebone corsets or giant hoops worn under crinoline skirts. And even though bloomers or petticoats might look dowdy and utilitarian to us now, eroticizing lingerie isn't a new trend either. Lingerie really started becoming more decorative and luxurious in the late 19th century and early 20th century, according to Valerie Steele, who wrote the introduction to Colin Hill's 2014 book, Exposed, A History of Lingerie. According to the correspondent exhibit at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology, there was a mania of colorful, decorative, and seductive lingerie throughout Europe that French journalist Octavia Eugenia, I hope I said that right, wrote in 1898 that the last remains of feminine modesty sunk out of sight. But underwear as a literal costume is a newer phenomenon. It could be situated as a reverberation of the provocative underwear as outerwear period in the 1980s and 90s. At the end of the 20th century, seeing visible underwear becoming more shocking than the nude body, said Christine Hugland, Associate Curator of Costume and Textiles at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. In a public lecture in 2012, she listed Madonna's Blonde Ambition cone bra as an example. That's the culture that led up to the fast fashion lingerie that is so popular in the early 2000s. Hewland used a Victoria's Secret ad that said fancy panties are fashion's newest accessory as an example. This time period, of course, involved the reign of the Playboy bunny aesthetic and also the era when the slutty Halloween costume went mainstream, according to a 2006 New York Times piece about the phenomenon. And like those costumes, Santa lingerie has its defenders and its detractors. There are several reasons people might be interested in a sexualized Santa Claus, says Dr. Justin Lee Miller, a research fellow at the Kinsey Institute, and author of Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire. Although he maintains that Christmas is this wholesome family time, he also sees the same forces Dan Savage described that attempted to sexualize Santa. He's asking people to sit on his lap. He's keeping a naughty and nice list. There are songs about Santa kissing women when he comes to visit. Maybe people who buy Santa lingerie are buying into the commercialized, sexualized lens of those forces. But he said that for most people, the opposite is probably true. They probably likely still see Santa as a virtuous, child-friendly figure, and that transgression from that norm is likely a big part of the appeal. I see that in my own work on sexual fantasies. Taboo elements are one of the most popular things that people are fantasizing about. Christmas is a religious, moral, wholesome holiday that is a way of subverting that by adding a sexual element. Taking things that might be perceived as wholesome and subverting them, that transgression, that taboo is something that turns a lot of people on. The role-play element could be another part of the appeal, says Amy Pearson, co-founder of Toronto boutique Stole My Heart Lingerie. Her store doesn't carry this type of lingerie. Their aesthetic is more minimal. We don't find Santa particularly sexy, she said, although she was quick to add that she would never judge anyone who does. I think that what it does is it incorporates that fun role-play aspect that lingerie can have. I think that just becoming a different person, maybe it's Mrs. Claus, maybe it's Santa, But Person also noted that she never received a request for Santa lingerie, although customers aren't shy about making other requests for products they'd like her store to carry. We've never been asked for it, so I think it's very niche, she said. When something that was once niche or fetish comes across over into mainstream availability, it can sometimes send unconscious messages to customers. According to some of the lingerie industry, the New York Times piece about slutty Halloween costumes quoted Deborah Tolman, the director of the Center for Research on Gender and Sexuality at the San Francisco State University. In her research, many of the teenage girls she heard from said they understood the word sexy as meaning being sexy for someone else, not for themselves. And when they asked what made them feel sexy, Tolman told the newspaper they interpreted the question, "What makes you look sexy?" That's interesting. Toronto designer Mary Young said part of the reason she started a lingerie line was because she never fit into the hypersexualized aesthetic of mainstream underwear brands. Looking at companies like La Senza or Victoria's Secret, I always felt alienated, she said. One of the most common things that I've seen in lingerie for as long as I can remember is the sort of childhood femininity that comes with it. The ideas of bows and laces and women being packaged as a gift or a present or an object, she said. She feels that Santa lingerie plays into that. It's a very youthful idea. We believe in Santa as children. It puts this asterisk on it that anything can be sexualized. When costumes of that kind become mainstream and women buy into them and buy them simply because that's what's available, some degree of agency can be lost. It's not allowing the wearer of the garment to be an individual person, but rather an object for someone else's fantasy. And as the article goes on, it goes on to talk about how media, movies, music, film, commercials, they all kind of buy into this sort of play of Santa and the iconography and the aesthetic of it being looked at in a sexual sort of fantasy type way. So, it's to the person that doesn't find it offensive or doesn't have any problems with it, this could be kind of seen as making a mountain out of a molehill, where people are going through the holiday season, they might be stressed and worried about bills, and you've had a year where maybe you've had some health scares, maybe you've had some financial scares, interest rates are high, the cost of a package of oranges has doubled in the last year and a half. And this could be something that allows you to relive certain aspects of a time gone by when you were not under the gun so much. Because the holiday season, it's funny, they call it the holiday shopping season. They call it a time where there's a lot of hustle and a lot of bustle. And so to take a bit of that and to kind of turn it into something playful and into something that's a little bit more, dare I say, risque, can have its benefits. And I think that if it's being done with somebody or somebodies that it's consensual, everybody knows what's up, you've got your safe words, maybe it's candy cane, whatever, you should be okay. But I would say, and I would sort of end this with saying that no matter what people think about this whole trend, it's something that, for the most part, is as a part of this holiday season that predominantly is tied to capitalism and to money, right? Because if we think about it, people will buy into the costumes and into the kink of it and into all of the sort of accoutrements, if you would, of having, Santa look a certain way and have the costumes altered to be somewhat sexy. It'll come down to the money. Victoria's Secret, La Senza, they're all making ridiculous amounts of money on the fact that women, as well as men, want to be perceived a certain way. And rather than, like the last bit of that article was saying, rather than having women, particularly women, as it targets the feminine form, as well as it feeds off of the male gaze for the most part within this genre of kink, there is a sense of being objectified for somebody else's pleasure rather than feeling good about yourself. And in reality, that doesn't need to be dressed up in a package or a bow. I've heard, and it sounds corny, the most sexiest thing you can wear is confidence. And if that's the case, then you don't necessarily need to have, old Saint Nick, crotchless panties or whatever. But in a more broader sense, what I think would probably be the most beneficial when talking about this sort of subject would be to let go of the perception that you have to look a certain way or have a certain figure to be seen attractive and desirable. Because I think one of the more harmless aspects of it is not that they're taking this holiday season and turning it into something of their own, the people who practice this, but the fact that the large majority of the models, as well as the people that are seen as the sexy version of Santa, are pretty thin. They're pretty youthful. There's no wrinkles. There's no, there's no bags under the eyes from working late. There's no older interpretations of it. Even some of the pictures I saw with Santas who were supposed to be, somewhat sexy and ripped and cut, they were physically fit. They didn't have any blemishes on their skin. They were very either tan. They had a full head of hair, a very well-trimmed beard. They looked like they were of affluence and like they had a lot of money. The women who were dressed up in that were, tanned and young and youthful and playful. And it sort of sets up this narrative that to be that, attractive and to be looked upon as desirable is to be young and youthful, and is to not have any worries and to not have any bills and to not have, kids nagging at you and worrying about deadlines. And so it creates even that further distance of what is seen as attractive and desirable and deserving of passion and lust and desire. And I think that's probably the saddest part of it. I think just like the holiday season tries to make you feel that in order to enjoy it, you need to spend boatloads of money, go into debt, get stressed and full of anxiety, rather than just enjoying the time with friends and family. I think it's also the case when it comes to this sort of kink aspect of the I guess you could say the sexual world or whatever you want to call it, but just that aspect where, older people can be attractive as well. Like people who are a little bit overweight or a lot overweight can still feel sexy and desirable. And you don't have to have the perfect skin and the ripped abs and the tanned, body to be seen as desirable and as to be taken within the context of having love shown towards you and attractiveness and all that. So I think maybe that's something that we could go even further with, and to hopefully maybe advertisers and marketers and people will put all body types into a sexy type of Santa aesthetic. There was a advertisement just a few years ago which showcased the LGBTQ aspect of this, where Santa was visiting a house and he and another man were embraced in a passionate kiss that drew a lot of ire from conservative types, because they felt not only are they trying to remove Christ from Santa, it's a Freudian slip there. They're trying to remove Christ from Christmas. They're trying to now make Santa, the replacement, gay. So, yay, the leftist agenda is complete, right? But it was interesting, right? The idea of Santa being looked upon as maybe a leather-clad leather daddy in the rough sex trade district or leather district, of San Francisco. I'm sure that's a theme as well. I'm quite sure that every and any type of sexual identity is utilizing, the iconography and just the theme of Santa for their own kicks. But yeah, hopefully this podcast didn't run too long. I mean, we're at 50 minutes here, but it was a fun little jaunt to see what the world thinks about this topic. I think when we look at things like this, in particular when it comes to holiday and religious and social figures that we kind of mold in our image, it can be interesting to see how people take that and twist it around a little bit. And for me personally, I don't have any issue or problem with it, and I think that the more the merrier kind of thing. I think that's where we'll leave it there. So hopefully this was a episode that got you thinking, got you motivated. Heck, maybe you're going to go out, dress up sexy for your significant other and have a jolly good old time tonight. Who knows? But until next time, you can find us, the Marketplace of Ideas podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, you name it, we're there. If you also have the time, check out our other podcasts, the Strange Tales podcast of Gods and Monsters, as well as the Adult Fitness podcast. We got a lot of episodes coming for this season, so we will not keep you hanging. But until next time, take care, be good to one another out there, and keep it real. Peace.